Alright, so holy freaking holy guys. Oh my god. We have just finished Final Fantasy XVI today, and it was the last Final Fantasy XVI Friday stream. Like all the yays around, right? We finished it. Oh my god, we have finished Final Fantasy XVI. Goddamn, it was a 3-month journey, right? From like from the end of like June to now, right? I think it was like almost 3 months, right? Final Fantasy XVI came out at like June 22nd, right? Let me just like double check real quick. When did this game come out? Ah, June 22nd. So we're like a month and like a month and a week later. But yeah, right? I think it's like time to give like a full like review of Final Fantasy XVI, right? I mean, we're not gonna go into like, you know, spoilers and stuff, but we can technically go into spoilers because we finished the game. We're not gonna do like a usual like, what was it, a movie recap or a TV show recap that recounts like the events, because, you know, Twitch doesn't play well with, you know, copyright or just watching movies or streaming movies. You have like a watch party, but even then, like, watch parties, like, you know, a very like brief time, because you can't save it as a past VOD. So you just have to like, you know, watch it at the time the streamer puts on the watch party, you know? So with the game, it's like, you know, a little bit different, because you get to see the past VODs, you get to see the streamer's journey with, you know, a game like this, and just, you know, recount like also not only the streamer but also for yourself, right? The lore of what got you, you know, roped in with Final Fantasy, with Final Fantasy per se, right? And I'll say it like flat out, right? I am not like the biggest Final Fantasy guy out there, right? The only like Final Fantasies I have played and completed were Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy 15, and now 16. So I have completed 3 games, right? And of course there's Remake, but Remake is going to be a fucking like trilogy. Technically like 4 games, but in the what was it, the grand like poobah of all like the Square Enix Final Fantasies that are out there, it's 7, 15, and now 16. I have played 8, but I could never get past like what, the triple triad system, right? Everybody says it's like it's easy, but I was just probably too dumb to figure out, you know? Like but I dug like, you know, Leon and all that shit, right? Leon, Cypher, right? Zeke. I forgot like some of the other names. There's Quistis, right? The hot teacher. But I've only played it like I would say 1/10 of it, and 1/10 is like, you know, being generous, right? I want to say like 1/3, but I didn't even hit 1/3. Final Fantasy games, right, are super long because, you know, that's like the JRPG system, right? You start out as like a squad of people, and you just like fight dudes until you fight like the big boss. You tear jerk a little bit, and that's like the Final Fantasy, you know, dogma, right? It's been going that way since like Final Fantasy 1, the OG Final Fantasy, the Dungeons and Dragons mythos. And, you know, right, Final Fantasy had like several degrees of, you know, changes from the old school, you know, Dungeons and Dragons mythos. The like Final Fantasy up to like 6, I think it was like 6, was very tailored to the D&D aspect, right? And then from 7 onward, Square Enix wanted to do more steampunk or, you know, cyberpunk heavy, well, well, no, not cyberpunk, steampunk, right? A little bit of like, you know, futuristic aspects of the later Final Fantasies with guns and shit. Because 7 at the time was, you know, super popular, it was a genre-defying, like, game, right? You could do, it's like the most, at the time of the PS1, the most advanced Final Fantasy there is, right? And 8 was like, you know, it's good, but it definitely shows its age with like all the pixels. The cutscenes look really good, but like, you know, the character models, right? Like that meme is like, what was it? The Renoa. You are the most handsomest guy in this ball, like, and then you look at Cloud's, like, not Cloud, sorry, Leon's, like, face, it's like, what are you calling handsome? But, yeah, Final Fantasy, has been doing, like, you know, the modern day slash future shit for, like, until 15, I believe. I don't know about, like, 14, well, no, 14 is, like, the mobile. There's like 13, there's 12, which is kind of like futuristic. 10 is, or 11, I don't know. 9, I've heard like little bits. 10, I've heard like little bits. 9, not so much. That goes to like show how much I'm not like a Final Fantasy guy, right? I'm just like a casual fan that like likes the shit that they put out, right? But in a way, right? Like I think Final Fantasy XVI is a good game, right? Because, you know, the main selling point of Final Fantasy XVI is the combat. And the combat is what really sells FF16. This was kind of like, you know, the action-like combat. Square Enix was kind of like shifting towards, you know, the action JRPG elements in their games with Final Fantasy VII Remake. One of their like side projects with what was it? Oh, Strangers of Paradise. A game that my boy Crack Rock Steady heavily loves. Because of like characters and whatnot. 15 was like, you know, the prototype. 13 was just, you know, like a concept. 13 was a concept, even though it was still JRPG. You could still see, you still do, like, from what I remember, and what I remember from 13 is like when I had like cable, like Comcast, and G4 was still like a thing, there would be like these like 15-minute like intro segments for certain games that were coming out at the time. And there was like an on-demand section for G4, and I saw like the 13-minute segment, the first 13 minutes of Final Fantasy 13. Saw like what I looked. I mean, it was very classic JRPG inspired. Enter a random encounter, you fight like dudes, and then you like stack like command inputs on like a character, and that's how like the game works, even all the way like toward like the preview boss battle. But 13 was like, you know, a proof of concept that Square Enix was like going towards the route of action JRPGs, and 15 was like, you know, an actual prototype. 7 Remake was also like another prototype because, you know, the action elements there. And 16 is kind of like, you know, the culmination of it. And 16 gets a lot of praises for its combat because of the crew behind Final Fantasy 16. And 16 had Ryota Sugimoto, right? Ryota Suzuki, who was an ex-Capcom employee, but he was well renowned for making the combat for Capcom's hack and slash action game series, Devil May Cry. I know he especially did Devil May Cry 5, right? He did Devil May Cry 5, and the reason why Devil May Cry 5 gets all the accolades it has for being the best action game, because, you know, it's some fun fucking shit. You could do a lot of like combo mad stuff with a lot of like these characters, right? And people are still putting out combo mad videos to this like day for DMC5, right? And in going back to like Final Fantasy XVI, it's no different, right? Like the combat again is what sells 16. Like you can do some crazy like DMC5 like juggles with Clive once you get like all of like the different summons in your arsenal, and once you upgrade them with different moves and stuff like that, you can definitely do some like crazy wild and shit in this game, right? And I think that's like, you know, the highlight or the main like positives about Final Fantasy XVI is the fucking combat, right? Because, you know, like, for me, I am not personally into JRPGs that much, right? JRPGs have to really, really, really sell me on, like, you know, if it's like, okay, the Khaiza's gonna try a JRPG, right? And that solely regulates down to, you know, the gameplay, like what am I playing at the end, right? Because it's a video game, right? JRPGs are now like a video game genre, not now, sorry. JRPGs are a video game genre that, you know, catapulted by Square Enix for, you know, their intricate like stories, their thought-provoking themes, you know, very tear-jerking like moments in their stories. So I am like okay with that, right? I can get down on like a good like story as long as it has like a good narrative, but you know, at the end of the day, right? I'm playing like a video game, right? And everybody has a different preference for, you know, video games. Some are, you know, more want to be like chill and play like Animal Crossing and all that shit. Others want to like compete it online and like in a fighting game. I'm more of a fighting game and an action kind of guy, right? And of course, I like a story, you know, that of course speaks to me, and of course I'm having like fun with it, you know. One of my personal beliefs is, you know, for storytelling or narration is don't take a movie, you know, like don't take like a theme too seriously, right? We're here to like have fun, right? Some of like my favorite games are like DMC5, Bayonetta, Hi-Fi Rush, sort of shits, right? I do like God of War. I do like what was it? Nier Automata. Some of like the other games like in the repertoire that I have are like, you know, they're fun, they're cool, right? That's like my like cup of tea. And of course, I was, you know, at first not down with Final Fantasy XVI because of the Dungeons and Dragons mythos, right? I rather like, you know, a game that's more futuristic or more steampunky in tone, or sorry, in setting and thematics. But I mean, it's still like Final Fantasy XVI charmed me, you know, outside of like the combat. Well, then again, sorry, let me rephrase that. The combat, of course, you know, fucking sold me, right? Doing like parries and dodge mechanics and, you know, custom like icon parry or dodge mechanics was the sweetest of shits, you know? That shit was so much fun to like pull off, right? Every time I discover something new, or like, you know, create like a custom like slot for Clive in Final Fantasy XVI, it's like I'm discovering new things to do and new ways to play, right? And I wouldn't be feeling that much, you know, of this gameplay high because if it were like classical JRPG, right? If it were classical JRPG, then I wouldn't be as much interested in Final Fantasy XVI if it didn't have, you know, the gameplay choices that it had. If it didn't have the gameplay aesthetics that it had, right? A part of a reason why I'm super glad that Final Fantasy XVI chose to be, you know, an action game, right? It chose to be like an action game because, right, like action games I feel are a lot more like engaging than just, you know, giving me like a story or, you know, like some moments or like a narrative feature. Of course, like probably like what was like a actiony JRPG that I would always like talk high about in terms of like gameplay, but fuck the story. Kingdom Hearts, right? Like Kingdom Hearts, you know, I'm an avid dude who likes to give credit to where credit is due, and like Kingdom Hearts was a fun like actiony JRPG series, right? Follows like Sora and finds like the door to darkness, and you gotta battle like Kingdom Hearts or some shit. But like, that's only because I praise Kingdom Hearts because of its action, because of the wacky nutty stuff that like you can do, crazy like combo mads, right? Even though, right, it is like meant to be like a serious like JRPG, but the stuff that like you can do, I love like actiony stuff, right? I love being, you know, engaged as a player instead of sitting through like, what was it, a half hour full of like cutscenes, right? I get bored easily. I don't want to like spend that time. I want to continue like theory crafting and like, you know, do awesome sick shit and do juggle properties, right? I love that shit, right? Hence why I'm like a fighting game player, is like, you know, I like story as much as the next guy. I love, you know, I love thematics. I love like casuals as much as the next guy. But you know, part of me really stems from like my fighting game like love, and it's that I love doing cool shit, right? I love being, you know, engaged. Like I like being the character, you know, and I don't get that like feeling when I play like just a traditional JRPG, right? Of course, like Kingdom Hearts was actually JRPG, but like the story sucks. But like the story sucks in my opinion, right? I mean, the universe is cool, it's interesting, but like, you know, the way of how things flow from Kingdom Hearts, right? It's like you gotta do like some Tetsuya Nomura shit, and that's like his baby, and it's like after like 3 or like, you know, maybe like before 3, it's like, what the fuck are you trying to say, my guy? Like, I'm convinced that like when Nomura tried to like make 3, he did not know what he was doing, because he was a character artist and he just became like director for Kingdom Hearts, and you know, that was like his job. And respect the man for where it's worth. Like, it's cool, but it's like, yo man, like Kingdom Hearts, like just following the continuity, unless you're like some crazy like avid Kingdom Hearts nut, then I applaud you for it. But like, damn bro, you mean to tell me that like so and so is so and so and so and so is so and so, like, you know, Aqua fucked Zack or like some shit? It's like, man, I don't fucking care, right? I just want to do cool shit. I just want to engage in battles, right? And granted, fighting games have like their crazy ass like lore, but you know, once you get down to like their lore, it's like it kind of makes sense. I mean, the same thing for like 13, but it's like Kingdom Hearts is like, you know, has all of these like themes, but like spoon feeds you like ridiculously hard because of like their fucking dialogue. Darkness, 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 Kingdom Hearts of light, and darkness of the starkness of the heart, and darkness, darkness, darkness. Oh my god, shut the fuck up. Like, goddamn. Fucking cryptic metaphors. Look, I get it, but damn, can you write like better dialogue for God's sake? You know, like, cheese and rice. Kingdom Hearts 3 came out in like the year of 2019 or some shit, 2020, and it still reads out like a fucking PS2 game. And that was like intentional, not like accidental. They could have had better character like writing or anything like that, but no, nothing of the kind. And another game like, right, like a JRPG I played is like Persona. right? Like the Khaiza has played Persona because I was looking for games on the Vita and I was invested, right? Because the story like grabbed me at its like hook. But then the more I start to play more, the more I start to find its like faults. Is that I don't like doing high school like romancing bullshit to get like my party's, you know, attributes leveled up. Not fuck that, bro. I'm not here to do this like dumb shit, right? And of course, you know, the combat itself, like it was okay, right? Like clicking buttons to like execute a command and that's it. You don't really do anything. You're just selecting commands for your character. I am not the character, right? I'm just the player. And you're just here to enjoy the atmosphere of Persona games, right? And I respect you for that, right? But to me, like, you know, selecting commands is just so fucking boring. It's just, I don't want to, like, you know, date somebody to upgrade their skill stats, right? Nah, bro, I don't want to do that shit, man. I don't want to be a high schooler, for fuck's sake. You know? I just want to, like, play a game. That's it. So luckily, Final Fantasy XVI is a video game. You know, has, like, action-y combat, right? So I'll give it props to that. Right? It is a video game, it is an action game, but from what I've heard, but you know, the only like small like con is like it's a JRPG, right? Because it's Square Enix, right? So you kind of have like this like push and pull, right? Of like, what is Final Fantasy XVI's, you know, identity, right? Is it an action game or is it a JRPG? And throughout the course of Final Fantasy XVI, it has this sort of like tug and pull of like, which one is it really, right? Like, the action-y parts are really good, right? The climactic moments of like the main story is awesome. Like, just like when the music kicks in and when you hear like, you know, Clive talking shit to assholes, right? And you do all these crazy like iconic cinematic QTEs. It's really dope. But on the other end is like, once you finish like those main quests, if you're like outside of those main quests, then you do like your typical JRPG stuff, side quests after side quests, right? The side quests are, you know, right, like I was drawn to them at first, but then it became just really fucking annoying toward the very end. Or like, by the time second half rolls in, by the time Clive becomes, you know, the new Cid, the side quests are just fucking annoying. Like, they're just there because I gotta fulfill the status quo of a JRPG, and that's multitude of side quests. There's no like time for main quests, right? And some JRPG fans is like, oh, side quests are really cool, but like, for me, the side quests are side quests when they really like matter, right? So for example, right, the side quests at the beginning of 16 was, you know, super intriguing because this is like the first time you're playing Final Fantasy 16, and then you start to learn the world about, you know, about the world of Final Fantasy 16, you know, the laws of bearers and kingdoms and, you know, jurisdictions, right? The branded, right? Game really is like a Game of Thrones kind of video game, right? And I've never seen Game of Thrones. I've never seen Game of Thrones, a Game of Thrones episode in my life. But the moment I talk to like homies or friends about Final Fantasy 16 and the thematics usage for Game of Thrones, yeah, that's really like, you know, accurate as hell, right? Fucked up kingdoms and like dynasties, mega maniacal maniacs hungry for like power, right? Evil bitches across the ass. it's definitely fucking Final Fantasy. It's definitely fucking Game of Thrones as all hell, right? And with the side quests, you start to learn about like the system of 16, of like these like royal decree aristocrats or bureaucrats or families, you know, treating, you know, for the lack of a better term, slaves, or as the game calls them, branded or bearers, right? And the whole like world of Final Fantasy 16 is like you have like these like mother crystals that you know, give way to like magic, and they give crystals, right? And with the crystals you can do magic, but some are like born without can do magic without a crystal, and they are ostracized as, you know, evil sinners, right? You can use a crystal to do magic, but if you do magic without a crystal, then you are like, you know, an inhuman being, and you are treated as such, right? And the first half of like these side quests really like dug home on like the idea that, you know, branded are not really like people, and like the people that pick on branded or use branded, right, as merely tools is fucking disgusting. You know, it makes you feel like, you know, you hate the system and like hate these fucking vile upper class assholes, right, for treating bearers as such. There's like one side quest that like it was in the Sembrek, right? It was in the little farm that a father and a son was making branded as like their playthings, right? And they would have like the branded fight like, you know, hungry wolves, like malicious wolves, right? And we killed them. We killed the wolves, but, you know, we had to report back as like the evil scum that, you know, higher ups are. Like, man, this is an evil father and son. I'm glad I got to hear their like death cries when they were eaten by wolves. It's like, my goodness, brother. Like, fuck me. The world in Final Fantasy 16 is so like dark. There's no like levity or, you know, lightheartedness to this Final Fantasy game at all, right? There are like a few moments, but everything is just, you know, just a very somber, you know, not many times that the game can be taking itself less seriously, right? It does at like very few points, but does not at times. So the side quests were like really engaging at the first half, but by the second half, when Clive becomes the new Cid, they were not engaging. They were just more fetch quests than anything, or just like, you know, errands that people ask on you to do. Sure, there are some like side quests that reveal like background characters, right? Give them more like lore and like depth, and I appreciate that. Ones with like, you know, cutscenes and whatnot. But for the most part, you're just going there, point A to point B, then back to like point A, and then back to point Alpha, or like, you know, the origin. And that's like your main quest. And some of like these like side quests, you know, don't reward you with anything as much, right? I did this like fucking side quest for the blacksmith, and of course I got like a cool ass weapon, but I didn't have the materials for it. I have to do like hunts, and the hunts were like really cool, right? Gave this like fucking Monster Hunter vibe of just, you know, vanquishing, you know, S class or B class, or even like B class, A class, or even S class rank monsters. And that was really cool. But I didn't feel like, you know, the payoff was good, right? Hunts is like, you know, you get to engage in the battle, and that's like the payoff, is that you're learning as like the player, and that's really good. you don't get any in-game rewards, right? Other than like XP or ability points or money, you don't get any special items. Sometimes, most of the time you do, but you know, it's just like a lot of like these hunts, a lot of like these like side quests are really annoying to deal with because they always come up and there's like 4, 5, 6, even like fucking like 9 or 10, and I saw that shit like near the end. It's like, what? Game, that's how you doing it to me? Like, fuck, man, the constant amount of like side quests was just so tilting at times that like, man, I just want to get to the main quest. I just want to like do this, find out more about like the main story and whatnot. But it didn't. But you know, I had to be in the main quest, and you know, of course it's JRPGs, right? Like you have the option to do main quests if you just gun it at main quest, but every JRPG player wants to do like the side quest first, or like grind first and then do the main quest and then do like the final boss, right? So it's a little bit, you know, unfair, right? That like, yeah, Square Enix is doing like this like action game, but throttling so much equal JRPG horseshit. You have also like what was it, the replay section where you can replay stages to get like a high score, but that's just nothing too crazy. It's just there to like, you know, you want to get good at the game, you want to be excellent at the game. You can definitely do like arcade runs and see how fast you do, get how many points you get, and set up like your leaderboards. And of course you have like a training mode in this JRPG. You get to test out new combinations. And also you have trials, but I only did like a few of these, like, you know, what was it? The hand of inertia or all that shit, right? Because, you know, I was going in those trials with the premise that they would like reward me for, you know, completing like in-game trials, right? Like a Devil May Cry sort of thing, right? You do like this like impossible to almost like annoying trial, and then you get like a health upgrade or even like a Devil Trigger upgrade orb. In those like Arita Stones, probably like ability points, but outside of that, you don't get anything else, you know? But that's like for gameplay. As far as like characters are concerned and like, you know, the lore and the story of Final Fantasy, because, you know, it is a JRPG made by Square Enix, and they are, you know, just the kings and queens of making powerful emotional resonance story modes. So the story modes, the story of Final Fantasy XVI was pretty good. It got really engaging and interesting because of the theming dynamic, because of the themes of, you know, the branded and how corrupt the higher society really is. But then it just became, you know, monotonous, right? Toward at the second half, because like Clive is like, you know, he's like a good protagonist, right? Son of the House of Rossfield and Shield of the Phoenix. Shield of the Phoenix, big brother to Joshua, and yeah, he's like a good character. He gets all like mopey because of like a story of a man, you know, with his sins, right? Killed his like brother, but in actuality, Joshua survived. Joshua survived, and you know, Clive just becomes like the head honcho of, you know, the hideaway who used to belong to like a dapper fellow named Sidiphilus Telemann, dominant of Ramu. And that's like kind of like the general like story, or the general story concept of Final Fantasy XVI, is how can we make, you know, the summons like engaging in a story level craft, right? Because, you know, in the past, summons were like a cool animation that you could use with materia to summon out these like gargantuan titans, no pun intended, to slay and vanquish foes. And this is kind of like, you know, a start of that notion with Final Fantasy 6 with Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 had like, you know, what was it? The summons being tied to like, you know, the kings. What was it? Not the kings. My bad. Not the kings. The summons tied to like, you know, the lore, right? Ifrit, the Infernian, the Glacian, the what was it? The Earthian, the what was it? The Leviathan, right? Oh, and that's crazy, right? Right? Because Final Fantasy 16 has like 6 summons, right? Or 7. Ifrit, Shiva, Phoenix, Garuda, Odin, Bahamut, 6, right? Bahamut and Rama. 7 summons in the game, right? I mean, of course, you know, it's idealistic to bring like every summon there is for Final Fantasy 16, but chose the ones that were, you know, engaging elementally wise and also visually wise of like how you can incorporate summons abilities into 16. But I wish there were like more summons that you can like play around with and like do, cause the summon list in Final Fantasy series is pretty fucking nutty, right? You have like giant like stone behemoths called like who's that summon? Alexander. There's Leviathan, that's also a really crucial summon, and they kind of like teased 16 kind of like teased on Leviathan being like, you know, an actual lore character or lore device. But he was not there. They just like, you know, off-screened him like out. We could have had a chance to do like some watery shit, you know? Something like Waterga or something like that. But only like 7 summons, but even then, like the 7 summons were really cool, visually pleasing, right? All these like, you know, what was it? These like unique Final Fantasy-esque like garbs that they got like going on. They look like, you know, they look like scratch, but they also look cool as hell. I think like my favorite cool looking summon would be Odin and Rama. I think that's like the 2 summons that I really enjoyed, you know, just on a looking perspective. I really enjoyed looking at the, you know, the design of those summons. But you get to use the summons, right? And the whole like game is revolved around like the summons, but once you go like deeper into it, is like, yeah, the summons were just kind of like pawns for this big asshole named Ultima, and Ultima just wants to recreate the world because he fucked up in the past world, right? Definitely like Ultima's kind of like one of those dudes that, yeah, it's kind of like one of those dudes that's like, man, shut the fuck up, but like when he speaks, it's like, let the villain talk, let him speak, let him cook. And what is he cooking? You know, what the hell is he cooking, sort of thing. Other than like Clive and Ultima, I kind of like dug like the Final Fantasy party makeup, because, you know, it is interesting to have like a dog as like, you know, a party member. And it's not like, you know, a talking dog like Red 13, like a talking cat, but you know, just having like a dog, right? Definitely has like some, you know, good core values. Just like have like a faithful companion, doesn't really like have to speak. It's like, man, a dog can like show more volumes than actually like just barking all the time. Well, I mean, of course, a dog barks, but like, you know, it's more engaging than just like going back and forth between dialogue trees and a side quest, right? Like, shit, man. Like at most of these side quests, I just like press X and just like get it on, get it on, get it on, get it on, you know, sort of thing. Right? Like, damn, man, can you like stop and shut up? Fuck. But who are like interesting characters in Final Fantasy XVI, right? That really like spoke out. Jill wasn't really interesting, right? Honestly, because she just felt like Clive 2.0. Because she just felt like Clive 1.0. Clive was like 2.0. Jill was like Clive 1.0, right? I didn't like sense anything unique about her. The only thing that was like unique about her was like, you know, the lecture that she gave to the molester priest in what was it, the Iron Kingdom. Yeah, just this dude just like, you know, killing, raping, and murdering bearer children for the name of their like their god, right? It's like, that's a fucked up dude. You know, that's some Castlevania level of, you know, asshole priests. But Torgal I dug, right? Because, you know, he is a dog. Joshua, he is an interesting character, right? Joshua like went from like, you know, how we first saw him as like a little boy who like needed to be dependent, and now it's like this like grown man that's like doing his own thing. And we found out more about him that like fucking kept alive somehow. I don't know if they would like explain that, right? Like what happened to Joshua during that time before like during like after Phoenix Gate and before like the final showdown, you know, or like reuniting with Clive. Like, what was he doing all these years? How the hell did he like grow up? I mean, of course, like the Order of the Phoenix, what was it? Not Order of the Phoenix, like the Imperial Order of the Phoenix, like the sheiks of Rossfield that protect the Phoenix from all due harm. So it's like Joshua is interesting because he's doing his own thing, and he has like, you know, a sacrifice to be made by keeping Ultima sealed. That's why you see him always like coughing and shit. But I didn't gauge nothing else out of like Joshua other than just, you know, being the brother of Clive, trying to support him, right? And just trying to be like his own man. Well, not trying to be like his own man. He wants to help Clive and bring a stop to like Ultima, right? That's his like ultimate thing, no pun intended. Any other characters that were like intriguing? Oh, Dion was really cool. I did like, you know, like the settings and the fantastical worlds of Final Fantasy 16. Desert one was really dope, right? The Dalmekian. This has like, in terms of like roster, it has like cool characters that I can like vibe with, and they're really cool. You know, Clive is like a really interesting character because he, again, he is like a boy. He's like a man that, you know, was burdened by the sins of like, you know, quote unquote killing his brother, right? And just trying to like redeem himself of his sins. And places this in this like fucked up world that he's in, you know? But he learns how to like grow. He's still the same, right? From the beginning of when you first see him, but it's just like, it's not the same like debonair or charisma like Sid. And Sid was like a charmer, right? Oh yeah, that Sid was a charmer, yeah. Yeah, he was a good guy because, you know, after like Sid's passing, Clive just like took the mantle and he's like the new Sid. But it's like, the thing about like a Cid is that, you know, right, they're charming, they got like sass to them, they talk in a way that's like, you know, kind of like, you know, you're just having a fun time and you're just, you know, joking around. Clive sometimes like jokes around, but he's always like a serious boy. Gotta die on our own terms. For Cid, gotta die on our own terms, you know? Like, he's okay, but like, man, I wish he could have like done better. Like, I like the glow-ups that he has, like with the beard and shit, and like, you know, just this Dark Knight looking motherfucker with a sword scabbard on his back. But you know, like, it's alright, but it's nothing too special. Outside of like villains like Ultima, who's a villain that like I really like despise? Oh, Annabella, fuck that bitch, right? You know, committed so many atrocities, you know, murdered her own husband and like killed off her own family, fled, right? And you know, made sweet lovey-dovey like made sweet like love to like the emperor of, you know, Sambrek, had a kid named, you know, Olivier, who turned out to be Ultima's puppet, right? All for the sake of like, you know, preserving her lineage or preserving her birthright, right? It's like, man, she's fucked up in the head, right? The amount of atrocities that she did by like, you know, hanging bearers by the stake, or just like burning them and having like inquisitors, you know, burn down villages and shit for, you know, hunting and killing bearers. It's like, yeah, this bitch has gotta go, right? Of course, with anybody similar with that like sentiment is like, you know, the higher ups are assholes, right? This is like, you know, purely like D&D, and it's like those types of people that like, you know, look down on motherfuckers because, you know, they're of like a higher like status or wealth, and they treat like, you know, and they treat bearers like, you know, subhuman. Like, it's really like fucked up. I hated that. Who else is like a good villain, right? That, well, Odin, yeah, Bahamut. No, sorry, not Bahamut. Sorry, Odin, Barnabas, yeah, Barnabas. Barnabas was like a cool villain because he's just this cool, like, you know, one strike, one kill, like foe. I think the first villain was like Benedicta, and Benedicta was like alright. Everybody like at first like glance of like Benedicta is like, man, I could fix her. Weird ass people like fucking Aki and shit. Aki, Jury, all them shits. Benedicta, Hugo, just this like monk that has like Titan and, you know, invades an entire nation just for the sake of, you know, finding the man that killed his love, or like showed his love in like in a basket. What else, right? I mean, those were like, you know, the villains. I mean, Dion was like a kind of like villain until he like reformed, because he's not all about, you know, the corrupt system of invading countries. He just wants to whatever keeps his country safe. Yeah, mommy. Okay, coming. So a lot of like Final Fantasy 16 is really good at some parts and really bad on others, right? It sort of have like this like unrealistic thing, right? Like, this is kind of like, you know, a Final Fantasy that, you know, kind of like plays with like the audience, right? Other than the fact that it just literally title dropped like the Final Fantasy name at the very end. Yeah, Final Fantasy has like this like very strict like script that they have to follow, but at times it's like the gameplay says otherwise. Right, once you get to like endgame status, or once you have like 4 or 5 summons on your cock, you essentially feel like a god once you learn how like parry timings work, and just defend and just guards, or like parries, and like even like, you know, regular parries with the slow time shit, right? You essentially become like a walking god, a god on walking 2 legs. But the game is like, nah, follow the script. But bro, I could literally just R1 that, I could heal like a potion and don't have to like die. I have a Phoenix down or a last elixir for that shit. No, nah fam. You're dying to the script, you're dying because of the writing. Right? It's like, it's kind of like a fucking parallel, right? Like, man, Final Fantasy XVI is good on the gameplay front and good on the storytelling part, but it doesn't really like match or sync up well, right? I have all the powers of a god, and one little swipe from a motherfucker, I'm dead. Like, come on now. Come on now. You know? So, it's hella like polarizing. Yeah, that was it, polarizing. To just have this sort of like divide for from gameplay to story. Of course, right? You know, the gameplay when during like boss battles is really cool because it sets up like the prelude, the climactic like showdown, and then like the payoff at the very end. But in some like instances where like Clive can just like, you know, air juggle a motherfucker, it starts to lose like, you know, what the fuck is a Final Fantasy, right? Doing all these like crazy fucking mechanics. Insane. But yeah, like Final Fantasy XVI is, you know, a good game, right? Not like dissing it with all these like cons and shit. I enjoyed my time, right? I enjoyed my time for, you know, just theory crafting, labbing, doing like hunts, doing engaging like hunts and story mode battles, right? I definitely like dug that aspect of Final Fantasy XVI. But it's not like, you know, remake or 15, right? I feel like, you know, this is the other thing that I wanted to say about like Final Fantasy or 16, is that Final Fantasy 16, I mean, of course, it made me feel like I'm invested into like the world, but I didn't feel like totally invested, right? Because I think like my first Final Fantasy that I've like played and completed, right? Not like played like on a casual level, but just like there's a difference for Final Fantasy between like play and, you know, play, right? Did you play it and then like stopped at a certain point, or did you play it thoroughly and then completed it? And Final Fantasy 15 was the game that I've like thoroughly played and completed from like beginning to end, right? I didn't get like all the lore bits and stuff like that, but I really did enjoy my time with Final Fantasy 15 because a lot of like, you know, I mean, of course, the gameplay, you know, is a prototype to 16, right? It's a bare bones like action game, action JRPG, but at least like the story elements and like getting from getting from like point A to point B, how like, you know, the prelude to the fight and then the outcome of the fight is really satisfying to just watch through, right? And of course, like I dug like the mythos, no pun intended, to Final Fantasy 15. I liked like the story of like 4 like strangers who became brothers on like a car ride, and they have to help the crown prince of, you know, Insomnia, right? And of course, you know, the main villain is fantastic, right? In my opinion, Arden Izunia, this spiteful bitch who, you know, was trying to, you know, bring salvation to the world at through his own choices, but you know, he became a villain. He became a villain, like the literal like Batman, the Dark Knight quote. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, and Arden chose that. So it was, Final Fantasy XVI was like, you know, a bare bones prototype of an action game, and what perfected that gameplay aesthetic was Remake and of course, you know, 16. But at least like the story for 15 I really dug and engaged with because of like these brothers talking, right? I really dug like the climactic showdown of Noctis sacrificing himself to, you know, save the world. And also, you know, it's lighthearted as hell, right? You have four dudes like talking to each other, and even like off battle and just like, you know, in battle, like, look where you're going! Didn't mean to do that, you know, like, it definitely like is fun, right? It's a fun time to have. Doing like team combo mechanics and switching to like other characters, it definitely felt like the fun factor was there, right? And of course, again, not saying that Final Fantasy XVI's combat is fun because it's DMC-like, but, you know, with the thematics and the story, it was set in like in a darkish like tone of Final Fantasy. It wasn't that much. It wasn't that lighthearted as its predecessor. No, it's not. Like themes of like talking about slavery and you know, sacrifice. Well, I mean, sacrifice was there in Final Fantasy 15, but just a lot of like, you know, dark like thematics, dark tones in Final Fantasy 16, right? Which is like, man, lighten up a little bit, right? I know it's like doom and gloom, right? And of course, like children fucking dying, right? Shit like that. Really like set the bar. Evil witches, evil bitches, asshole kings, like, you know, a god trying to, you know, covet the mistakes and like believing humanity is like an asshole. Very like Japanese fiction, like every like Japanese fiction like thing always has to like, you know, kill God or some sort of fashion, right? That's just like a staple in the Japanese fiction industry, right? So it's got all these like dark tones, but only like in certain sometimes, right? The game starts to like, you know, levy itself, right? I would have to like look back because I don't even remember what are like some like good moments in the series, or sorry, in this game. So I'll have to like track them down, right? Look back through like old playthroughs, old like streams and stuff. But 16 is like a good game, right? I would honestly give it like an 8 out of 10 more than anything. I would think that's like a serviceable like rating, right? I would not give it like a 9 or like a 9.5. It would be like a 9.5 or a 9 if like the story like engages me, right? It did at first hour or the first stream. Like I really dug it. But yeah, just like doom and gloom, right? Central like theme, right? And other themes like as well. Forgiving like your sins and all that shiz. Of course, like the many side quests like really hinder like this Final Fantasy. Sort of like creates like this like, you know, paradox between like an action game to like a JRPG. So it's hard for Final Fantasy to, you know, solely, you know, define itself what it really wants to be. Does it want to be an action game or does it want to be a JRPG? So many things, right? But overall, right, like I think like Final Fantasy 16 is a good game because of like, you know, the combat, right? If you're there to like, you know, be engaged, if you like combat, or like seeing cool shit fly and like actually like doing them, then that's for you. And plus, like, the game has accessibility features, so that if you're, let's say, like a bitch ass like bum that doesn't know how to do action game stuff, and if you're just like a JRPG kind of guy, right, just selecting menus, I don't have to think as much, even though turn-based RPGs are a lot about thinking, but I think of like the opposite, because you're not engaged. There are accessibility items that give you like auto charge, auto parry, auto dodge, right? You can definitely play the game on very, very, very easy mode if you want to, right? And just enjoy the story from there. But like I said, as like an opposite, you get a lot more fun if you just play the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what's that like journalist that at the first week of Final Fantasy XVI, he was just like, you know, playing the game, right, nonchalantly. He was eating like a cheeseburger or some shit and was just pressing this, and he gave like a fucking hot take of Final Fantasy XVI. It's like, this game is so like contrived as hell, right? I'm literally just mashing square on the controller and I'm beating the boss, no problem. I'm an expert. Shut the fuck up. Like, damn, dude. Fucking, that's a hot take right there, because that's literally what that purpose of that guy was doing, is to just throw some shade, throw some, like, you know, hot takes here and there. That's it. You know? But yeah, Final Fantasy gets like an 8 out of 10, and you know, it's definitely like worth it for playing this game, right? It is a long ride. If you can power through it in a month, congrats. I had to take it like slow for like Fridays only, because the Khaiza wanted to make it like unique and not spend like every day playing it, otherwise he'll miss out on other fighting game streams and whatnot, you know? But it was a fun ride, you know, nonetheless, having a dedicated day for Final Fantasy, just playing the game, progressing through, you know, enjoying moments of the game. It was definitely good. But I would not say I would give Final Fantasy XVI like, again, like a 9 or a 9.5. It's good for where it is, and that's like, it's an 8 sort of thing. But yeah, like, we finished it. This video will probably be uploaded like sometime soon, right? But hope you guys enjoyed Final Fantasy as much as like I did. May not be like a super big Final Fantasy guy, but the series is enjoyable, right? I do dabble into those games a little bit. The next Final Fantasy game we're going to be playing is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? And I'm not very, because I'm not a big Final Fantasy VII nut, like some people are, but I am excited to just, you know, play the game, because I had a fun time playing Remake. Remake was a lot of fun, even though it was like kept it in Midgard, but the way how Rebirth is shown off with all of like the TGS press conferences from the Sony like direct, and like hands-on footage from people that have played the game from the Square Enix offices. Oh my god, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is gonna be fucking awesome. That shit's gonna be next year Game of the Year. Just have like an open world, like the beyond Midgard, the world is like your oyster, and you could just do a lot of shit like you did in OG Remake, but better graphics, better stylized, new takes on the story. So I'm definitely intrigued on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But yeah, that's the review for Final Fantasy XVI. Hope you liked it, and you know, let me know if you like it, right?